At age 62, I'm now 66, but at age 62, I became horribly ill and nobody could figure out why. My background is pretty sedentary, computer oriented work. I do parametric 3D modeling. I design equipment, but basically do it on a computer so that computers can cut the parts out and put them together. I love the work, not really strenuous. And I just started developing really, really strange problem. What I called insatiable thirst, urinating constantly, getting up 7, 8, 9 times a night, craving sweets, and losing weight.
Sounds like diabetes.
Type 1. Yeah. Diabetes is kind of a horrible term because it has 2 different diseases within it. I mean, diabetes is the name of a symptom. It's not the name of a disease, or that's my opinion.
Well, there's definitely a pretty significant difference between type 1, which used to be called juvenile onset, and type 2, adult onset. And there's actually even some subcategories of that now there's actually some people claim there's even 4 or 5 types of different diabetes that are out there. But anyway, so you 62, you discover you're type 1 diabetic. How did you talked about some of the symptoms you have, but when did they say, hey, or how did they discover? Did you roll into the emergency room with a blood glucose of 500 or something, or what happened?
Oh no, I'm way too stubborn for that. My wife had been on my case about going in and seeing the doctor, and I developed a really bad thrush infection in the back of my throat. Mm-hmm. And when it just about closed off my airway, she just put her foot down and let me know that I was going to the doctor, made the appointment, and took me in. Luckily, the nurse practitioner that I saw is familiar with diabetes and the symptoms of high blood glucose, and she knows that fungal infections are very, very common. It's just glucose is fuel for them. Mm-hmm. And first thing she did was finger stick me. It was like 5 something. Mm-hmm. And this was in the morning before I'd eaten. So that's pretty hard. So not having any lab capability there, it was a small clinic in a rural agricultural area, gave me some metformin and sent me home. I called back the next day and I said, I got my blood glucose meter and it's broken because all it says is high. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that blood glucose meters won't read anything over 600. So she screamed for me to come right in, put me on insulin, and that was the beginning of my journey.
Yeah, that's got to be a shock. But, like I said, this is how it's, and it's interesting because in their 60s presenting with type 1 diabetes, this is for some reason, this is becoming more and more common than it used to be. That, type 2 is very common, but even type 1s are happening later and later in life and at different stages. So it's kind of a unique thing.
I would question that conclusion. I work in a couple of groups that support type 1 diabetics and help them and coach them. And we just recently did a survey in our adult LADA group. Mm-hmm. And over 60% of the people in that group were originally misdiagnosed as type 2s.
Yeah.
Some of them for many years. So when you look at, you say, wow, it's happening in adults more. No, they're finding out that it's happening in adults more. What you really need to ask is, what happened to those poor type 1s diagnosed as type 2 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I'm sure there is a percentage of mischaracterized diabetics, and we're discovering, you mentioned a lot of the, the late onset, autoimmune diabetes of adulthood, but there is, and there's a certain percentage of type 2 but diabetics that burn out their pancreas to the degree where they stop making insulin and they effectively also become type 1. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So you get this diagnosis, they put you on insulin, they send you to a diabetes educator or something like that and tell you to eat 50 grams of carb a meal, or how did that work? How did that
No, I was sent to the ADA's website to download their diabetic self-care handbook for type 1s.
Okay. So
real personalized care.
And did you pursue that for a while?
Yeah, failed miserably. Incredibly horrible.
What was the advice they gave you, and what do you mean by you failed?
50 grams of carbs per day. Make sure you get so many healthy whole grain servings per day. What's a good food? What's a bad food? Obviously, they don't want you drinking soda pop, but they don't have a problem at all with you drinking orange juice.
So you said 50 grams per meal or per day? I think it was per meal.
Per meal,
Okay.
minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum. Many want you to eat more than that. And it poses particular, you've got this website, this wonderful intervention for people called Carnivore. Type 1s can't do what you say. Our dosage is based upon the amount of carbohydrates they make us eat. If we tried to go carnivore without being crazy like me or crazy like Ryan Attar and figuring out our own dosage, we couldn't possibly do it because we won't be instructed in how to titre our doses for the difference in carbohydrate and protein.
Yeah, I mean, maybe perhaps not through the ADA. I mean, there are other sites that there are other ways to figure out protein dosing and fat dosing and things like that, which is interesting. But let me ask you, so you're
Dr. Bernstein's a good one.
Right. Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution is an excellent resource for people that are suffering from either type 1 or type 2, quite honestly. So, I mean, they put you on insulin. What was the regimen? Was it basal bolus? I mean, how did they, long acting?
No, it was basically, I can't remember what they call it, but you check your blood sugar. And if your blood sugar is at this level, you use this much insulin before a meal. And if it's this level, you use this much insulin a meal. And then you start out on so much basal insulin and increase it or decrease it according to whatever your fasting insulin is. Not a very good way of managing it, even if you were on a high carb diet. You really need to tailor the insulin that you take to the food that you eat.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuance to that, and it's without going into the details and length, there's a lot more to it than just titrate this based on your fasting insulin, and I think there's a lot more things going on there. But with the high carb diet, eating at least 50 grams per meal and potentially much more than that is what often the ADA is recommending. What kind of control did you have? Did you see your numbers going up and down pretty high? And what kind of A1Cs were you ending up with?
We call that the roller coaster, where you have very high glucose. So you take a correction dose of insulin and you go down too low. And then you take a correction of the 15 grams of carb that they suggest, which is ridiculous, by the way. I don't take any more than 2 to 4 grams of carbs now to modify my blood sugar. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly screaming down hypoglycemic, screaming up hyperglycemic many times during the day.
And how does it feel? Just for those
who haven't experienced. Horrible.
What do you mean by horrible? What are you feeling when it's happening?
I couldn't work. I'm now, I call it retired. I'm actually disabled. What I do is it's intellectually challenging and highly technical. And the brain fog, inability to think straight, short-term memory loss, emotional outbursts. They don't, and underlying it all was a very fatalistic attitude that I had, not realizing that it was the food I was eating that was causing that. I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't care. Yeah. I literally didn't care. It just surprised me so much when I did get straightened out and that lifted. I had no idea how badly I was being affected until it was gone.
Yeah, I mean, that's something. I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people don't realize that, diabetes has a lot of effects on people, and there is a huge significant mental issue. And the fact that your blood glucose is going up and down so dramatically, and you're hypoglycemic, and you're sweating, and you're starving, and you can't think straight, and you feel like you're drunk, and then it goes up, and then you start falling asleep, and it's just this constant sort of battle of just never feeling kind of normal. There's a brief period where you might feel normal, where your blood glucose is in a relatively normal range.